And now it's time for little ultra snacking.
Welcome to Snackboy. Slurpy tongue. I want to start this show by saying goodbye to someone who, of course, I never knew, Stanley Kubrick, the filmmaker of A Clockwork Orange and The Shining and Barry Lyndon and 2001, The Space Odyssey, and Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Stanley Kubrick was probably the best filmmaker of all time, and Snackboy wishes to say, oh, Hardy, you'll be missed. He was 70 years old and died in his own home. Most of you probably know that if you know who Kubrick was. And I also want to say that I forgive Stanley Kubrick, and I know this comes across as tasteless. You're probably judging me there. You're probably saying, Snackboy, come on, the man is just freshly dead, freshly buried in the ground, and here you are apologizing to him. That's a little tasteless. Well, the reason I was angry for many years, people just holding it in, because when I was a kid, I wrote Stanley Kubrick a letter. I was very young, and I was like 14, and I sent it off to England, and he never wrote me back. So all these years I've been holding it in. I've been angry. But let's just get on with the snack. He'll be very missed. He was a brilliant, in all seriously, brilliant man. Have you ever had a friend who is quiet and introspective and just the ability to stay cool when everyone else is losing it? Well, I had such a friend. His name is Phil. Phil is a movie aficionado. He's a movie appreciator. He's a good guy. And when we were kids, Phil and me and our other good friend, Teddy Goodridge, went off to camp. No, it was not the New Life Bible Camp. I don't want to hear it again. I'm tired of fielding those New Life Bible Camp questions. It was Camp Wakatonka. And we were at Camp Wakatonka, and there was a kid there. And me and Teddy and Phil were just livid. We were beside ourselves because this kid, Sammy, was so annoying. He was redheaded and freckled and evil. He was like that scary-looking redhead. You know, there's always a good-looking, kind of nice, innocent redhead, or there's a mean, evil kid, freckled redhead. Well, he was the evil kind of redhead, and he was so mean, and he would say, "Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?" And I would be like, "Sammy, leave me alone!" And Teddy would be like, "Leave me alone, Sammy!" And he'd be, "Who's your daddy?" And, of course, Phil was always cool, and Phil would just kind of ignore him. And one day we were all there in the rec hall of Camp Wakatonka, and he was just getting on our nerves. The three of us were trying to mind our own business and be cool and just, you know, watch the honeys. No crime in watching the honeys. And along comes Sammy and all his freckled evility. And he's like, "Who's your daddy, guys?" And we're like, "Well, Sammy, it's not you. Okay, if anyone is our daddy, it's anyone but you." And he'd be like, "You guys are gonna get it. Before you go home, I'm gonna send you home bruised and crying. Your mamas. Who's your daddy? Who's your mother frickin' daddy?" And we were like, "Sammy, leave us be." And then finally, I didn't see it happen. I can only imagine what was happening. I should have looked at Phil. I wish I could have seen it. Phil, the quiet one, the one who always held the rage in like Carrie before that prom. Phil, for the first time, I'm sure his eyes bubbled and rolled up in their sockets. And all that anger and frustration just went through his veins, and Phil's, it would almost be like that guy, that doctor turning into Hercules, or no, not Hercules, the Incredible Hulk. And it was just his shirt probably bulged and popped, and before you know it, Sammy was being lifted off the ground in the rec hall, and we were like, "Phil?" And it was Phil. And Phil, who had never done anything violent. Phil, who never cheated at cards. Phil picked him up. Before you know it, Phil was running across the room. We were like, "Go, Phil! Go, Phil!" And "Who's his daddy?" And he was like, "No!" And all his, and that evil freckled kid who usually was so good at being the bully, fear, his eyes like little bunny rabbits, his eyes like little pink bunnies, and he was going toward the wall, and Phil was rushing toward the wall like a rage, and before you know it, bam, right in the wall, smashed his head in the wall. Of course he was wearing a hat, so it's not like he had any permanent, you know, he's not riding the short bus to school or anything, and he's probably graduated by now, but that's not the point. Phil rose to the occasion in revenge. We had revenge. But of course, the camp counselors got upset, and they were like, "Oh, you guys can't swim today. The three of you lost your swim privileges." So we were sent to our cabin, and guess what we did? We played cards, people. We celebrated with a rousing game of poker. And just because you might have a friend who's quiet, just because you underestimate someone, you never know that one day they're going to snap. They're going to snap, and when they snap, they're going to get medieval on your butt, babies. Medieval!